You should have come.
All right. Wow, I don't know how to follow that. That was intense. A lot of numbers being thrown around. Well, hello everybody. Like I was saying before, my name is Sergeant Jess Payne with the Coconino County Sheriff's Office. Just a little background on myself. I've been with the Sheriff's Office since June of 2010. I started working in our jail division, and then decided I didn't like being in jail with the inmates, so I wanted to work the road. Started with patrol in 2012 and did that for a little while. Then I went and worked undercover narcotics, buying drugs and guns and people, and it was a pretty interesting career, you know, getting to work undercover. And then after that, I promoted to sergeant, and I've been on the road ever since. The reason I'm here talking to you today is because in addition to my normal duties as a patrol sergeant, I'm also the lead active shooter instructor and active attack instructor and situational awareness instructor for our agency. And so what I'm going to present to you today is a course that we call Citizens Response to an Active Attack Event. And so basically what this goes over is what to do should you find yourself in danger, and how to identify danger before it happens, and how to look out and save not only yourself, but your coworkers and your family. What I'm telling you today isn't only something that you use while you're at work, right? You're not only situationally aware when you're going to show that house, right? You want to be situationally aware when you take your family to the movie theater, right? Or to the mall, or to Walmart, because you never know when danger is going to strike. And when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, right? So this course was put together by a program called ALERT, which stands for Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. It's an acronym. In the government and military and law enforcement, everything is an acronym. And so this was made through Texas State University, so they study crime and specifically active attacks throughout the United States. And they look at all the different risk factors and what could have been mitigated to increase survivability within that attack. And so all these studies go through, and part of my job as a terrorism liaison officer is we study these crimes, major crimes, to find out what could we do better and what could the potential victims have done better to survive these attacks. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. Uh-oh. The webinar is being recorded by the host or a participant. Got it. Hey. So, does anybody know what I already hit. Okay. Does anybody have any idea what an active attack is? Like a definition of it?
Somebody's actively attacking in the moment.
That's good. That's good. I like you using the words in the definition. Basically, an active attack event is just an attempted mass murder. Okay? I know. This is some. I should have said this is some heavy stuff I'm going to be going over today. You guys got it. If you need a minute, feel free to step out. But it's an attempted mass murder. So you think about when people think of attempted mass murders, the big hot topic right now is active shooter, right? But, and you hear that on the news all the time, active shooter, active shooter, active shooter. But we don't like to call it that. We call it an active attack. Because you'll see throughout this presentation, when I go over some history, there's a huge history of bomb attacks. Think of the Boston Marathon bombing. Okay? Or the World Trade Center, right? The first time. You think about, there's knife attacks, right? We have mass stabbing attacks in the United States and overseas as well. Another thing that we're looking at is vehicular attacks, where people are using vehicles as weapons because they can't get a hold of a good weapon. So when we talk about an attacker, right, we talk about the bad guy. And throughout this presentation, I'm going to tell you I know the names of all of the people who have carried out these attacks because I have to study them, but I'm not going to give them any notoriety. I'm not going to say their names. But there actually is no profile of an attacker. A lot of people think, it's that shady person with their hood up that's lurking in the shadows as you're walking out to your car from the mall at night, right? But statistically, most of the time when there is an attack, the person is known to the other person, right? Think of domestic violence, right? It's someone that you know and someone that you have had contact with before. And we're going to talk about that a little more. But when we talk about active attacks, a lot of these people have an avenger mindset. And what that means is they feel, as wrong as it is, that they have been hurt or that they've been wronged by society, and they're carrying out an attack in order to avenge the wrongs they believe that is done to them. Some of them actually broadcast what they're going to do on social media and with manifestos. I'm sure you guys all heard about the Tops Market in Buffalo, New York that was recently attacked. And when we talk about that attack, the scumbag, before he went in there, he live streamed the event, but he sent his 120-page manifesto out to the internet and to different news agencies. And the reason that they do that is because they want notoriety, they want attention, they want to bring, they want people to understand why they carried out this attack and radicalize more people with it. Again, if you think about Columbine, right? Everyone remembers Columbine. Those kids were supposedly bullied, and so they were getting revenge on all of the people in the school that they felt had bullied them. And so that's when I talk about that avenger mindset in some broadcast. Now, what does this mean for you guys? Throughout your going out your daily lives, right? I'm sure we all have social media, Instagram, Facebook, and you start seeing some concerning posts, right? That is you being situational aware, saying, hey, this doesn't look right. If in doubt, report that to the police. There are First Amendment protected speech. We all understand that. And just because someone says something that we don't agree with and that we think is horrible, it may not be against the law. However, when it crosses the line to where they're actively threatening people's lives or threatening people, that's when we can step in and say, okay, you have crossed the threshold of free speech, and now you're threatening violence, right? And that's when us as terrorism liaison officers and law enforcement can get involved and start getting a profile on these individuals. So does anyone have any idea what would be a risk factor for someone who wants to carry out an attack against someone or a group of people?
What did we learn Saturday, ladies?
Run away.
No.
What's their risk factor? Being distracted, looking at your phone, having your hands full, not being aware, basically distracted.
Absolutely, right? I'm going to go over this in a little more detail, but the bad guys look for what they call, what we in law enforcement refer to as a soft target, right? They want to attack someone, someplace where they're not going to get resistance, right? They don't want a fight. They want to get what they want, whether that be a sexual assault, whether that be a homicide, or in an active attack, mass murder, right? That's why you don't see them attacking military bases and police stations, because they're going to get some resistance, right? They attack malls, churches, schools, places where innocent civilians are, right? Office buildings. Let's say there's they're upset, they've been fired for some reason, and they want to go back and get revenge on everybody in the office, right? They know that they're probably not going to get any resistance. So exactly, being distracted is a huge one. Looking at your phone, being on your phone. We like to say, keep your head up and keep your head on a swivel. Always be looking around, especially when you're out in public. Another risk factor, mental illness, obviously is a huge one, untreated mental illness. And drugs and alcohol, right? People who are high on meth tend to have violent tendencies. PCP, angel dust, all of that stuff. And so a lot of times mental illness and substance abuse go hand in hand, right? They have a mental illness and they're not getting it treated correctly. And so what do? They self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. And so it just feeds this dangerous cycle. And then a person who would normally, if they were on the correct psychiatric medication, be completely normal, is not. They become violent. So another risk factor is there's a history of violence in their family. Okay, so let's say they were abused as a child. The only way they know to express their emotions is through violence, right? That's another huge risk factor. Or as a child, they suffered sexual abuse. Okay, again, they perpetrate that as an adult onto others because it's the only way they know how to show emotion. Another big one is isolation. They're isolated. They don't have a good family structure. They don't have a good home life, home structure. You know, they live in a basement and spend all their time on the internet and the dark corners of the internet looking at stuff online. So those are just some of the risk factors that we see when we look at these attackers after the fact. So if this is a map of the United States, and there's going to see a bunch of dots. So these are records of active attacks in the United States starting in 2000, and it goes to 2021. Obviously, we haven't finished 2022 yet. If it's a large yellow dot, it's a firearm attack with 4 or more victims. If it's a large red dot, it is a knife attack with 4 or more victims. And if it's a blue dot, it's a car attack with 4 or more victims. And then obviously, if it's less than 4 victims, it's a small dot. And so we're going to let this play out, but we're at 2010 right now. And I want you to kind of look at the map and see what correlation you see between where the dots are and the map of the United States.
Is there a bomb?
No. It's only knife, car, and gun for this one.
Is that Flagstaff with the big yellow dot?
No, that's Santa Fe, probably.
Yeah.
No.
We haven't had one in Flagstaff, thank God, yet. I mean, we have murders here, like had a couple double homicides and stuff like that, but it wasn't an attempted mass murder. It was just, when I say just, it was like a husband killing his wife and kids and stuff like that.
So a mass attack would be 4, so the 4 or more of what constitutes to claim it as a mass attack.
A mass attack, exactly. And that it was motivated by that Avenger mindset, right? It wasn't a gang shooting, right? Those aren't, like gang violence isn't reflected on this, but acts of terrorism are, active attacks like, Route 9 Harvest Festival, Uvalde recently would have been considered a mass attack.
Going for more than 2 or 3 victims, then it's
Exactly.
In Florida.
So,
No.
464 attacks in the United States. So what I want you to take away from here is if you notice where the dots are clustered, it's around major metropolitan areas.
Yeah, it's also around water too.
Yeah, coastal areas.
Yeah,
There's something in the water.
something in the water, exactly. So I'm sure if you look at this map, you'll notice that it happens in major metropolitan areas. But that's not always true, right? Flagstaff is still technically a small town in comparison to Phoenix, but we're growing. And these attacks happen, we're going to talk about Sutherland Springs, Texas, tiny little town. I mean, it's a bunch of farmers and good old boys, and there was an attack there. So just because we live in a smaller town, don't think that you're not at a risk for being a victim of an attack. It can happen anywhere at any time. But if you notice, Montana, Wyoming, and Maine, those are the safest states in the union.
And I definitely don't want to hang out in St. Louis. I saw that.
Yeah, you want to hang out. I don't want to hang out in St. Louis anyway. So when we talk about where is the most likely place that an attack is going to take place, if we look at the recorded attacks, most of the time, about 50% of the time, it takes place at a place of business, like this one here. That's where most of these attacks happen, right? Not this one specifically, but a place of business. Think of like a mall, like Walmart in El Paso, Texas, like a Walmart was attacked. Over 20% of the time, it's in an outdoor venue, okay? So basically like a park or a large festival. Think of the Route 99 Harvest Festival in Las Vegas. That was an outdoor festival. That would qualify. Schools and other is just over about 15% each. So it kind of gives you an idea when you're watching the 24-hour, 7 days a week, CNN breaking special, what do you hear about the most? The schools, right? But in reality, most of the time, it's going to happen at a business. So when we talk about the attacker, 58% of the time, they have no connection to the place that they're attacking. Meaning they went there and they scoped it out because they were looking for the most casualties possible, right? They wanted to be, as for lack of a better term, the best mass murderer they could be. And so they were looking for a place. And we find that they like to scout these places out, which again, in turn, suspicious activity, right? If you see somebody who you've never seen around your building and they're sitting there and they're taking tallies of how many people come in, how many people come out, just acting suspicious, call law enforcement. We'll come, we'll talk to them, we'll FI them, we'll field interview them, get their name, run them, see if they have a warrant. And at least then they know, hey, they're on to me. And hopefully they decide they don't want to carry out this attack. 42% of the time they do have a connection. Think of this as like the student in the school, right? Or the angry employee that was fired, right? They have a connection to the place that they're attacking. So what I'm going to go over now is some historical events and what we as law enforcement have learned from these events. The reason that we study history is so we don't repeat it, right? Hopefully. Again, we're not all perfect. The reason this program started was because after Columbine, we realized that the way law enforcement was responding to these types of attacks was not good. And you saw that in Uvalde recently, right? The failure of law enforcement to act. And again, I'm not going to stand here and defend those guys. With our training, we are trained to go direct to threat. Meaning if I'm there by myself, I'm taking my rifle and I'm going after that guy. And so this program that we've started, the one I'm teaching you is for the citizens, but I teach all over the state, and this program teaches all over the country law enforcement agencies to respond to both indoor and outdoor attacks. And so the first one I'm going to talk about is UC Santa Barbara, California. Does anybody have any idea what happened in UC Santa Barbara? Remember that attack?
Mm-hmm. A kid was upset about not being popular and shot up his campus.
That's a different attack than the one I'm talking about, unfortunately.
That's Santa Barbara too, though.
That was Santa Barbara, exactly.
Okay.
This is the UC Santa Barbara. So in this attack, this was a multifaceted attack. So guy was living with his grandparents, was disgruntled, and stabbed them both to death. Then he got into his car and ran down as many people as he could in the street with his car. Then he got out of his car with a butcher knife and started attacking people until the campus police arrived and put it into the threat. Okay, so this is a multifaceted attack, right? Cars were used, knives were used, and so we learned that, hey, your crime scene could be strewn over miles, which this one was. The next one I'm going to talk about is the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. So this actually changed our training in law enforcement on how to respond to an active attack. For those of you who don't know, there was a subject, he was radicalized by ISIS online. He called 911, pledging allegiance to the Islamic State, and then took a rifle into the Pulse nightclub and began a killing spree. Because he didn't agree with the lifestyle of the people that frequented the nightclub. And so at this nightclub, he killed a bunch of people on the dance floor and then took a bunch of hostages in the bathroom. And so there was an off-duty law enforcement officer who was working security there, who was hired as security, and unfortunately he was shot in the initial attack. They got into a little gun battle, but the cop ended up losing, and then he went in and carried out this attack. Well, while he had hostages in the bathroom, the cops showed up, and they were trying to negotiate for the hostages to get them out alive. And what was going on? People on the dance floor were bleeding out. They weren't getting the medical care that they needed. And so what this changed in law enforcement is now we employ the Rescue Task Force, which is where we coordinate with fire and EMS to go into the warm zone, meaning not in an active gunfight, but if we have the shooter or attacker neutralized or isolated, we start bringing in fire, EMS, along with law enforcement to start treating the wounded and extracting them to a casualty collection point so that we can get them out of there faster and get them to a higher level of medical care. And so that's this taught us. The next one, Mandalay Bay, right? 34th floor. Bad guy rented a hotel room that overlooked the Route 99 Harvest Festival, which was a country music concert. In fact, one of my good buddies that used to work at the sheriff's office here, he's now a trooper, but he retired because of his injuries from this attack, was shot twice. He was shot once in the buttocks, and right, exactly. I'm not gonna lie. After I found out that he'd been shot in the butt and in the ankle, I kept sending him like the Lieutenant Dan ice cream. Anyway,
Give him a good laugh.
it is a good laugh, and I have a dark sense of humor, like most cops. So, if you can't laugh, you're gonna cry, right? So you might as well laugh about it. But anyway, his name was Brandon White. You guys can look him up. He did some news articles and stuff after the attack. But this was a huge game changer of the way law enforcement responds. I'm not going to go into a bunch of details, but the equipment that we carry changed because of this and is continuing to evolve. The bad guy barricaded himself in the room, and they had to use this explosive breaching charge to blow the door down, and the guy killed himself as the cops made entry, right? That happens a lot. These attackers kill themselves because they don't want to, face the music. Another thing that it learned is that 911 and cell phones will be overwhelmed. So there were so many people fleeing the 99 Harvest Festival and calling 911 that it overloaded the cell towers and it completely shut down the entire network in Las Vegas. And so then what happened? They can't get out on their cell phones. People are injured, or they have injured people. They're running into all the surrounding hotels, right? Like Treasure Island, I don't know, a bunch of the hotels, right? They ran into all these different hotels, and those hotels were calling from their landline saying,
Luxor,
Excalibur,
MGM. Those are the ones that are near Mandalay Bay.
All right. See, I try and stay away from Vegas as much as possible. There's a bunch of weird people there. No offense to anybody here from Vegas, but
That's true.
They
yeah.
have to run a long way.
It's a few miles.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, they're the ones around Mandalay Bay. They were all running into these casinos saying, "Help! I've been shot." So what do? They can't get out on cell phones. They call from the landline, and they say, "There's a shooting." And so we went to a conference about this type of thing, and the incident commander that night said we had to divert resources to all these different casinos because we thought we had multiple attackers in multiple different casinos carrying out a coordinated attack because we were getting multiple reports of active shooters in different casinos. So we also learned that hospitals are going to be overwhelmed. How many ambulances are on at any given night? Right? And so they were having to load people in the pickup trucks and take them to the hospital. Cops were throwing people in squad cars, driving to the hospital. Well, then the hospital got overwhelmed. And so we talked to one of the ER doctors, and we know what they did. They cleared out the maternity ward, and they made it another emergency room. They were running 2 people to a ventilator, right? Because they didn't have enough ventilators for all of the people. 59 people died, and over 200 were wounded in this attack. It was the worst shooting in U.S. history. So, also in 2017 was a bad year. Times Square, New York. Bad guy rented a U-Haul truck and decided to run down as many people as he could in Times Square. He killed 8 and wounded 15 just using a Home Depot truck. Sutherland Springs, Texas. Does anybody remember what happened here? It was a church. It was a small country Baptist church. There was the bad guy was dishonorably discharged from the Air Force and was upset with the world and decided that he was going to go take out his revenge on the innocent people who were worshiping on Sunday in this Baptist church. He killed 26 people and wounded 20 more. Luckily, the killing was stopped because the next door neighbor, a man by the name of Stephen Williford, hero. If you guys ever if you guys Google him and read his story, he was sitting at home on Sunday. His daughter walked in and said, "I think someone's shooting up the church next door." So he went to his gun safe, he grabbed his rifle, and I got to hear him speak. And he didn't keep, I don't know how many people here know anything about guns, but the thing that holds the bullets is called the magazine. He didn't have any of those loaded. So he just grabbed a handful of bullets out of a cigar box, and as he's walking across the street, he was loading his rifle. And then he confronts the bad guy, ends up shooting him a couple times. The bad guy decides, "I don't want any of this," gets in his car and leaves the church, flees. Some old cowboy in a dually diesel pickup flatbed pulls up, and Stephen Williford jumps in with him, and they chase the guy down. Yeah, they chase him down. the back roads, and the guy ends up crashing into a farmer's field. The bad guy does. And they end up holding him at gunpoint until the police arrive. And a funny story, the police officer who was first on scene also spoke at the same conference. And he said that he got there, and our typical thing, you guys have all watched Cops, right? We start yelling at him on the PA system. You know, he started saying, "Drop the gun," and Steve Wilford, like, dropped it on the hood. He goes, "Not you." So, but this also taught us that medical, right? Law enforcement needed more medical training. And so now we get training in tourniquets, we get training in stop the bleed, pressure dressings, basically treating combat-oriented wounds, because we're going to be there first. The shooting has gone. The bad guy has left. Now we need to start treating these people. And in a small town, EMS is going to be overwhelmed, especially with 20 wounded and 26 dead. So, all of that, a little bit of history, we have learned that the number of deaths in an attack are directly related to two things. The first is how quickly the police arrive. Okay, the faster we get there, one of three things happens. Either the bad guy kills themselves, we neutralize the bad guy, or they surrender and we take them into custody. The second thing is target availability. How many people are there that can be a target? How many people there can be hurt? The average response time for law enforcement across the United States is 3 minutes. But think of that, that's New York, that's NYPD, Phoenix PD, where they have 2,500 cops. I can tell you Flag PD and the city of Flagstaff is probably close to that, maybe 5 to 6 minutes out in the county, where we're, just to give you an idea of how the area that my squad covers we're supposed to have 7, but we're so short we got 5. We're hiring if anybody wants a job. If the realtor thing doesn't work out, we'll give you a free blog. But we have to cover a huge area, all the way from city of Flagstaff, down 17 to Stoneman Lake Road, all the way east to Winslow, all the way north to the Navajo Nation on 89 and Up Loop Road, and all the way west to Belmont. So we have a huge area, so our response time could be a lot more. And like I said earlier, when seconds count, police are only minutes away. So what you do matters, and hopefully throughout this class you'll learn some tricks to survive should you be unfortunate enough to be in one of these. So disaster response, I'm going to kind of cover this a little bit quickly, but we can go back. There's 3 stages to the disaster response. What's the first stage? Does anybody have an idea?
Recognition.
Okay, yeah. Recognition? That's actually pretty good. That's actually really good. Denial, right? You need to recognize there's a threat, and most people deny. Right? They're like, that's not gunfire, it's fireworks. It's not gunfire. If you actually listen to one of the first 911 calls that came in Columbine, one of the teachers, and I'm not faulting her at all, just using this as an example of denial, is she says, a student is setting off fireworks in the hallway and it shattered the window. I got a piece of glass in my shoulder.
Oh, shoot.
No.
She got shot.
She got shot, exactly. A bullet came through the window and hit her in the shoulder, but she had never thought that could ever happen at a school. And so she went with what she knew, what she thought. Hey, it's probably just fireworks, right? Mm-hmm. I can tell you if it's one loud bang, could be somebody dropping something, could be thunder, but multiple repeated loud bangs are most likely to be gunfire, and you should treat them as such, just in case. It's better to treat it like that and it's not, than it to be that and you don't do anything. The second one is deliberation. Deliberation is probably the most important phase of disaster response. The quicker you can decide to execute a plan, the faster you can get out of a situation. It doesn't have to be a perfect plan, right? A good plan executed now is better than a great plan executed once you've already been shot a few times. So come up with a plan and execute it. We're going to talk about how to come up with a fast plan. And the last is decisive movement, right? Once you made that plan, execute it as quickly as possible to get out of the situation. So the other thing I want to tell you is be the one that is the leader. Okay, there's formal leaders, there's informal leaders, But in an attack, people are kind of like sheep, right? It's follow the leader. So if you are the one, if no one else is reacting, and you think something bad is happening, you act and other people will act. And I'm going to play you guys a video. It was a study done by some social scientists about how people act in groups.
Like this street in New York City. If you were unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or taken ill unexpectedly, you might think that surrounded by all these people, someone would intervene. After all, isn't there safety in numbers? Psychologists say no. Research suggests that often a victim is less likely to receive assistance when surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander. When people are in a crowd, it's easier to pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility. Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passers-by, Peter is an actor. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill. How long before he gets help? Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is two conflicting rules. One is the rule that we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have effectively a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help, and it's very difficult to rebel.
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? Four minutes later, and 34 people have passed without stopping.
People don't really want to know this one. They just haven't got the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
Yes, thank you.
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
First I thought she was dead. Then I saw checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her because there was a bloke sat there just absorbed in reading a newspaper.
This time, Peter's dressed as a respectable gentleman. Now that his dress is in keeping with those around him, how long before he's rescued? 6 seconds. She even calls him sir, and suddenly everyone's a good Samaritan.
Do you suffer from epilepsy?
No.
Why you're lying on your foot in the rain?
Because he's part of the right group. Everyone wants to help.
I just hate to be in this position of feeling ill and nobody helping and walking past, so I just like to check that he was okay. And I thought, well, it's wet, so you must really be ill because you ruined the suit.
Yes. So, be the change. Be the one that acts, and everybody else will follow suit. So, deliberation. So, when we talk about deliberation, I like to talk about the human brain versus a lizard's brain. So, I like to think that as humans, we are very complex creatures, right? We like to analyze things. We like to think. Some of us overanalyze things over and over and over again. I get some nods from the crowd. I'm one of those too. But in a stressful situation, we have 3 things that the human body will do. Does anybody know what those 3 things are?
Fight or flight.
Boom. Right there. You've been through this before? Fight, flight, or freeze, right? The first 2, I'm perfectly okay with you guys doing. The last one will get you killed. A lizard brain, on the other hand, right? We can make a decision of what we're going to do. Lizards are pretty much hardwired as self-preservation anytime a shadow passes over them. Whether that shadow is from a bird, a cloud, a human, what does that lizard immediately do without thinking?
Freeze.
No, they dart under a rock. So, they disappear, right? They have self-preservation. They know that they've been eaten for centuries, and that if a bird or if I see a shadow, that's going to eat me. I need to get out of here, right? So they don't have to think about it. They just immediately act. So they have no deliberation. Stress response. So when people are stressed out, their heart rates increase. And with that comes adrenaline dumps. People can do amazing things on adrenaline. I'm sure we've all heard of these, the mom who lifts a minivan off of her kids, and she's never deadlifted a day in her life, but that day she deadlifted a minivan to get the kid out from underneath it, right? That's what we're talking about. The human body is capable of amazing things. Somebody who's not a runner, when someone's shooting at them, they become Usain Bolt, right? As we get more and more stressed out and our heart rate goes higher and higher, things start to happen. One of the things that's going to happen is you're going to get tunnel vision. For those of you who don't know, tunnel vision is when you're hyper-focused on a threat against your life. They interview law enforcement officers after shootings, and the cop will doesn't see anything else except for the guy that's shooting at him. And he'll say, the barrel of that gun looked that big around, right? Because they're hyper-focused on that. The whole world just kind of tunnels to that. The other thing that happens is loss of fine motor skills. So something that's very simple, and in the next video I'm going to show you that, something that's very simple under normal parameters is very hard. So think of unlocking your phone, entering your password, and calling 911. You're shaking, right? Your hands aren't going to work. When we talk about, we also have auditory exclusion. I always ask this, are there any hunters in the room? Nobody hunts? Never mind, then this analogy won't work. Basically, you won't hear things you would normally hear. So the analogy is like, normally when you go out and sight your gun in before hunting season, you wear ear protection, right? Because it's loud. It's going to hurt your ears. But when you're out in the field and, a giant animal snaps out in front of you and you have to take that shot, they say, I don't hear it. They never hear it, and their ears don't ring afterward. It's the human body's stress response. It's auditory exclusion. It's crazy. And that's one of the things they say is like in combat, right? When something crazy is going on and they're shouting and the person is so hyper-focused on that threat, it may take going up to them and physically touching them to get their attention. Even though you're shouting their name, they won't hear you because of that auditory exclusion. So we're going to watch a bunch of videos and photographs from this incident. This was a kosher deli in Paris, France. It was attacked by a member of ISIS. He walked in with an AK-47 and started shooting. But what I want you to watch is this lady's stress response. Are there any moms in the group? Okay. Tell me, when you had a little kid at home, how often did you take that kid in and out of a stroller?
My kids pretty much stayed on me or were attached to me. I was a little
protected,
but they were constantly on
Right.
me until,
Or taking them in and out of a car seat, right?
Yeah, sure.
You probably could do that in your sleep with your eyes closed, blindfolded while drunk, right?
Yeah, don't tell our kids. But
Well, hey, I don't have any kids.
we're
At least,
pros at being moms, all right?
yeah, all my kids have 4 legs and a tail. But from what I understand, is it's pretty much second nature taking that kid out of the car seat. So watch in the center here. You'll see a lady trying to take her kid out of a stroller. How much trouble she has with that fine motor skill of just hitting the button. Let's take a quick break, like 5 minutes, use the restroom, and then we'll come back and we're going to talk about some more situation awareness stuff. My dispatcher's calling me, so I have to call her back and let her know I'm fine. I apologize. Sure. Two. Oh, oh, this is getting recorded. Right? Better have my A game. All right, good, good.
I heard back from the team.
Yes, ma'am.
My son, he doesn't live at my house, he has a different address. He ordered something through Amazon and it came to our house like after 10 p.m. I was looking at the camera and I go, what? And the guy drops the packaging and runs really fast. So I called the police and I said, somebody just dropped the package in front of my house and they came over to the house, and I'm like, at 10 something p.m. they're delivering. He said, yeah. I thought it was kind of odd.
Was it your son that dropped it off?
No, he ordered it.
Oh.
But he never told me, hey, I'm gonna receive a package at your house or anything. And I see that it was so late, and I couldn't, on the camera at night, I couldn't see the truck. I think it was UPS actually that dropped it off.
Nice.
And I couldn't see the truck, it was dark over there, but I could only see the front door where they dropped it off.
Gotcha. Well, I'm glad it all worked out. Glad it wasn't anything
I
suspicious.
felt kind of stupid to call the police, but I was like,
We get called for like the weirdest stuff. That's actually pretty normal. Like, don't even worry about that. We get called. People call us because they think they see UFOs. I mean.
Do not freeze. Do not freeze.
Oh, that's okay. All right, you guys ready to get started again real quick?
No, don't trip.
All right. So has anyone ever heard of the Station nightclub? So the Station nightclub was a nightclub that got burnt down in a fire. There was a band called Great White. It's kind of like an AC/DC type.
I remember this.
You remember this? Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to go over a quick little case study, and this is all about situational awareness. And it sounds like it's pretty common sense, right? Know your exits. Know where the emergency exits are. When you're on an airplane, what's the first thing they do once you sit down?
Tell you where the exit is.
Tell you where the exits are, right? When we were all kids in school, we had to do like fire drills all the time, right? And we had to jump out of the back of the bus. We knew what to do. We knew where the exits were. So this is a schematic of the Station nightclub right here. And that shows the path of the fire. This is the main entrance right here. And then these are your two emergency exits. So everybody who went into this nightclub, and we're going to watch a quick video from one of the people who was filming the band, the only way they knew to get out was the way that they came in, right? And I don't blame them. I mean, you're going to a nightclub, you're going to have a few drinks, hang out with your friends, listen to your favorite band. last thing you're thinking about is, what if this place burns down, right? So watch this next video and see, number one, how long it takes people to react. That denial, right? That something bad is happening. Watch how long it takes for just the fire alarm to go off.
And when was this again?
I think it was 2010.
Great time still singing.
Good man. Actually, it might have been 2012. I don't know.
Is it the attack or just the fire?
So it was pyrotechnics. Yeah.
That's how.
Yep. So they had like fireworks going off, and it ended up catching foam that was flammable in the walls on fire, and then it spread. So 30 seconds just for the fire alarm to go off. Now people are like, uh-oh. And so everyone starts hurting toward the only exit they knew, which was how they came in. The other thing, people didn't remain calm. They started pushing, they started shoving.
How many, did a bunch of people die in that?
Yep. So this is how many people died after the firemen came. They put the fire out. Exactly. 31 people died in the hallway in the main entrance. Because the door came so clogged with people trying to get out that they couldn't, and then they were trampling over each other, right? They were fighting to get out. Another 18 people died waiting to get into that hallway. 9 people died as well waiting to get in. Obviously, all these other people didn't know how to get out through the main bar or through the kitchen, and so they just went to wherever they could, and they ended up dying of smoke inhalation. The fire department broke these windows and got people out that way as well. But again, that's how many people died. Here's a photograph of the doorway once the fire department arrived. Just to kind of show you, knowing your emergency exits when you're in public is a great thing. So, when we're in the deliberation phase, try and calm yourself down. Breathe. We call it, in law enforcement, we call it combat breathing. All it is a way to lower your heart rate when you're super stressed out. Like, you inhale for 3 seconds, hold it for 3 seconds, and then exhale for 3 seconds. And all that does is lower your heart rate and helps you think and breathe.
We use it when we submit the offers.
Exactly. Once you submit the offer, combat breathe, right? You know, because you don't know, maybe they'll counter.
Yeah.
Shift your emotion, right? Change your fear into like love for your family. Whatever it is that you need to tap into to survive, tap into that, right? Try and change your perspective, change your emotions. Say, I'm not going to die here. I will survive. Like that song, I will survive, right? The last one is stay physically fit. If you can run 3 miles and have a heart rate of 150, 160, and you can function and think and all that stuff, you're going to be able to react better under stress, right? That's why there's physical fitness standards for the military, for law enforcement, and stuff like that. So just try and stay physically fit, whatever that means for you. If it's hiking, weightlifting, whatever you want to do. Another thing to do is script and practice, okay? Mental scripting. If this happens, I'm going to do this. And what that does is that you already have a plan in your head, so you don't have to devise that plan. Think of your brain like a computer. If you already have the program written and you just have to double click it to execute the program, that's a lot quicker than having to write a program on the fly, right? And so if you already have a plan of what you're going to do, you know what to do. I remember as a kid, right, I'm sure we all were kids in school, and the dudes in the red truck that have a Dalmatian showed up. And what do they teach you? If you ever catch on fire, stop, drop, and roll, right? And I totally thought that catching on fire was going to be a huge part of my life. And luckily, as of today, I haven't caught on fire yet. But I sure as hell know that when I do, I'm going to stop, drop, and roll, right? Because some dudes with mustaches and a red truck told me that. Same thing with fire drills, right? In school, we all practice fire drills over and over and over again. Does anyone know how many children have died in the United States in school fires? None.
Really?
Right? Because we know what to do. We have a plan. So if you have a plan in your office or a plan with your family, and you've already talked about what you're going to do when the time comes, you're going to be able to react faster, and that can save lives. At the end of the day, we all want to be like Rick Rescola. Does anyone know who Rick Rescola was? He's a true American hero. Vietnam veteran, came back from Nam, and he decided that he was going to get a job as head of corporate security for Morgan Stanley. And he worked as the head of corporate security. I believe he was the vice president in 1993 when the World Trade Center was bombed the first time. He stayed in the building that was smoldering for 12 hours helping firefighter rescue trapped survivors. He stayed on with Morgan Stanley. And after the terrorist attack in 9/11, he again led the evacuation of the World Trade Center. He was last seen going back up to get more people out when the building collapsed. And he's credited with saving 2,700 lives because of his quick action. As soon as that plane hit the building, he started the evacuation. Before police, before fire, and he was a security guy, right? Corporate security. Which I imagine is a pretty boring job, but he saved a lot of lives. Does anyone know about the train attack in Paris? Clint Eastwood did a mediocre movie on it. So, 3 friends, right, on a train. A guy comes on with an AK-47 and starts shooting. They immediately made a plan and executed the plan.
Little less than a month ago, 3 childhood friends were on a train bound for Paris when they heard a gunshot. Amid screams and commotion of the passengers, they quickly focused on a man wielding an AK-47. Almost instantly, one of them said, "Let's go," and the 3 ran toward the shooter. Those 3 friends are with us here today. Thank you, Alec, Spencer, and Anthony, for what you did on that train and for joining us here. And that's because after Alec said, "Let's go," he and Spencer and Anthony sprinted toward the gunman while he trained his rifle on them. Spencer tackled the assailant, and the 3 worked to disarm him. As we know, Spencer was stabbed in that effort. After they knocked out the gunman, they tended to other injured on board before paramedics and police arrived.
So, all this leads up to, what do you do if you find yourself in harm's way? So, first thing, don't deny. If you hear gunshots or you hear something that might be a threat to you, immediately go into the deliberation phase. Take as little time as you can denying that something bad is happening and assume something bad has happened. So go straight to deliberation. For those of you who never heard a gunshot before, this is really loud, so sorry, but it kind of sounds like this. Okay? Playing dead. A lot of people say, well, if I find myself in one of these attacks, I'm just going to play dead because then they won't shoot me. It's not true. This video here is Christina Anderson. She's a survivor of the Virginia Tech attack. And she tells her story of what happened in classroom 211 and what happened to her trying to play dead. Okay?
We heard the first shots at around 9:40 a.m. I was sitting on the wall of the classroom, so in the hallway, and I could hear the shots getting closer and closer very quickly. I mean, there was only a few seconds between the first time we heard them and when he actually walked in. To me, it sounded like an axe being taken to a piece of wood. And our teacher, she opened the door and she peered outside and she immediately shut the door and she said, "Call 911. And right then, he walked in just seconds after. There's absolutely no time to think or to duck or to take cover, and people just kind of fell to the floor. And he immediately walked in shooting, and he went to the other side of the classroom, and he started going down the rows. He went down each row very quickly, very purposefully. And I remember thinking, your turn is coming. You're going to get shot. I mean, I didn't realize there's an active shooter, but I knew something bad was happening. He came back to our classroom 3 times, and on the 3rd time, he killed himself in the front of the class. In between each time he was there, you could just hear people crying and coughing, and the cell phone started ringing. When he was in our class, I remember trying not to breathe very much, so he couldn't tell I was alive. Because as my stomach was hitting the chair, I was thinking, you know, he can see me breathing, he can see me alive, and that was very scary. I'll never forget when the SWAT team first broke in at around 9:51. The officer in the front of the classroom said, "We have a lot of blacks in here." And at the time, I couldn't comprehend what he was talking about, but he meant triage codes. And I remember looking into the girl to my right and realizing, you know, what black meant. He looked over me and he said, first he said yellow, and then he changed it immediately. He said red, and that's when I first started panicking. I still couldn't speak. I was shot 3 times, lying on my back, and I was thinking, what do you see? Like, what can you see on me that I can't, that you would change me from yellow to red? He killed 12 people in my classroom, including our teacher.
So hiding and hoping, not a good option, right?
Wait, go
Yep.
back.
Yep.
She said by playing dead, she convinced law enforcement to not attend to her wounds. Is that what you were trying to catch from that?
No, you're trying to catch that she played dead and he came back and shot her 2 more times.
Oh.
What she was talking about with the triage codes is when we're going through a scene, we rate people based on their injuries. Black means they're dead, right? There's no saving that person. Obviously, deceased is what we call it. Red means they need immediate surgical intervention to save their life. So that would be like a sucking chest wound, a wound to a joint that has to be packed with like quick clot and stuff like that. And then there's yellow, which is wounds that can be treated on scene. Like if I put it, like someone gets shot in the arm and they have an arterial bleed, I put a tourniquet on and it stops the bleeding, then that would be yellow, because that gives us more time to get more red cells. And then green means they're fine. Like they're able to self-extract or extricate. They may have like small wounds, like bruises, bumps, cuts, but they can walk and they can leave themselves. And so, yeah, that's kind of what Christina was saying, was that she came in, he came back 2 more times. He killed himself in front of the class on the last time, but he shot her once and then came back. She was trying to play dead so that her stomach, she was saying that, like, I didn't want him to see me breathing, and he shot her 2 more times. Luckily, she survived.
What could she get done after she was shot the first time?
So we're gonna talk.
Okay.
So hiding and hoping, not a good option. So deliberation phase. What I want you to do is the first thing, if you can get away from the attacker, leave. Avoid everything, right? If you can't avoid, you're going to deny. We're going to go into detail. When I say deny, it means you're going to deny the attacker access to your location as best you can. Whether it be locking yourself in your office, locking yourself in your car, just getting them a barrier between you and them. And the last one is defend or fight, right? We've all heard of run, hide, fight, which is kind of like the generic thing that everybody says. Well, we go into a little more detail. We say avoid, deny, defend. And the reason for that is because we don't want you just to hide. We want you to do something to deny them access. I love this song. It's my favorite. So, situational awareness, right? Key. We talked about this already a little bit, but recognize a threat. And if you see a threat, immediately leave the situation. This is a video from the 2010 Panama school board shooting. Guy was upset because his wife was a teacher. She was fired. I don't know why. You'll hear there, obviously folks on the school board, the guy comes in and says, I have a motion. And then he takes out a can of red spray paint and paints the V for Vendetta symbol on the wall, like that movie. And then he pulls out a handgun. And everyone just kind of sits there. And eventually he says, everybody except the school board can leave. And then people, instead of leaving, they sit there for a second, they get up, they gather their laptops, their purses, I've got to kid you not, their jackets, and then they walk out. And I want you, and then there's...
technology that knows it's on the sharpness you have there is part of
plan we have it for several and have followed this meeting. This will be the first step in that whole process. Everybody in this room.
They blurred it out.
There was a break.
So he tells everybody to leave. They all just kind of sit there, and then watch these two guys. They're like, all right, I'm gonna take my time,
Follow what he says here.
get my purse, Purses, laptops, all that can be replaced. Now see this lady who just went back? She's awesome. She tries something. It doesn't work, but at least she tries. See her sneaking up on him? She whacked him with her purse to try and knock the gun out of his hand. But at least she tried, right?
What did he do? What happened? Yeah, what did he
Nothing. She just laid down, and then he tells her to get out and leaves. And then he ends up shooting one of the school board members. And then there's a school resource officer who's down the hall, hears this going on, and comes in and ends up shooting the bad guy. They don't show you that part, but that's pretty violent. So if you can, get out. Leave as soon as you can. Know your exits, like the station nightclub, right? Know where you can get out if the primary exit is blocked, or if the bad guy's at the primary exit. And as soon as it's safe to do so, call 911. Don't assume somebody else has, because remember social proof, right? Everyone else thought someone else called 911 and nobody called 911. So be the one, as soon as it's safe to do so, call 911. When you're on the phone with 911, they're going to ask you a lot of questions. The dispatcher will. If you don't know, don't guess. Just say, I don't know, and they'll ask you a different question. So this is that, I'm going to start it again. The deli. So notice he goes in with the rifle, the terrorist, and all the people start fleeing out the front door, right, to get away from him. That's exactly what you want you to do if you can, is get out. Because if you're not there, you can't be a victim. So if you can't get out of a primary exit, again, consider your secondary exit. This is security footage from that kosher deli. And if you see, there's a couple people here who are hunkered down and they're hiding, right? What's right there? An exit, right? You don't know if it was locked or not. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Where else could they have gone?
Up the ladder?
Up the ladder, onto the roof, right? Yeah. You can survive a second-story jump. In fact, in Virginia Tech, a bunch of people jumped out of the second story and saved their own lives. You might sprain your ankle or break your arm, but it's better than getting shot. So, yeah, think about your secondary exits.
Did they? So was that? I'm just for my own peace of mind. Was that a usable exit they could have gone out?
I don't know.
Oh.
I honestly don't know. I would like
to think that they tried.
Maybe they tried and it didn't open, but
just stayed there. Okay.
Stayed in there. So let's say you can't get out, right? Let's say that exit is blocked and the roof hatch is locked. Mm-hmm. Now what are you going to do? We're going to deny, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to lock the door. We're going to turn the lights out, and we're going to stay out of sight. But we're not going to just hide and hope. We're going to prepare ourselves for that bad guy coming to your door. And when we say deny, barricade the door. Okay, the heavier and the more stuff, the better, right? Have you guys, those little brown plastic doorstops? Yeah. Sometimes if you have a door on carpet like that one, turn that thing upside down and kick it as hard as you can underneath the door and wedge it in there. If your door doesn't have a lock, that's pretty good at stopping somebody from coming in, because they'll try and open it and they won't be able to, okay? What we've seen time and time again in these attacks is if the bad guy tries a door and it's barricaded or locked, usually they'll fire a couple rounds through the door and keep moving because they want a mass casualty count. They don't want to sit there and try and breach a door. They don't want to take that extra time. So just doing this might save your life because they'll try the door. Obviously stay away from, don't stand right in front of the door. But could save your life. Doors like this, see this hinge right here? If you have a belt, wrap your belt around there. Because if this is shut, this won't open, except for that much, The tighter that is, the better. This is a hinge for your door. So if you have that secure, it's gonna definitely help you out.
There's two vertical door handles, you can like wedge the chair through the door.
Absolutely. 2 vertical door handles. Wedge something through the door so it won't open. It's good thinking. So this same picture from the security footage, right? This door, what could they use to have barricaded it? Maybe the trash can, right? That big dumpster. Those racks, right? Those shelving units. Something they could have done to help increase their survivability. I kind of went over this already. The simple door stops, wedging them underneath the door to help stop. If you have an outward opening door, right? Outward opening door, tension sleeves, wrapping around the hinges, tying the door shut to something inside, or just like this guy, he's just holding the door shut, right? He's standing off to the side, so that way, hopefully, if a couple rounds come through the door, they won't hit him, but it's still tension on the door. They do sell commercial door locks that are like secure for these attacks. I've never seen a building in Flagstaff that has them, but just note if it's something that you guys want to look into for your offices, they are out there.
But you can't use it in every single door, that thing, right?
The door lock?
That's
for outward opening doors.
Or from outside, not from inside.
Correct. So like if someone is outside and the door opens to the outside, that door locks it from the inside so they can't get it open.
Okay.
So we talk about denial. We're going to talk about Caitlin Roig. She was a teacher at Sandy Hook Elementary School. And her actions of successfully denying the attacker access to her kid's location saved her entire class.
That all day we have met people who remind us what teachers do, how much they care even in the face of terror. And I sat down with a first grade teacher at that school, Caitlin Roig. She heard gunfire, large windows exposed her classroom, so she managed to rush 15 small children into a tiny bathroom to try to save their lives.
I put one of my students on top of the toilet this time. I just knew we had to get in there. I was just telling them it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. I pulled the bookshelf before I closed the door in front of it. So it was we were completely barricaded in. I turned the lights up.
Did you tell them to be quiet? Did you worry about one of them?
No, I told them to be quiet. I told them we had to be absolutely quiet. Because I was just so afraid that he did come in and then he would hear us and then he would maybe just start shooting the door. So I said, no, we just have to be absolutely quiet. And I said, there are bad guys out there now, we need to wait for the good guys. I wanted us to be okay. And I'm so saddened that there are people who in this situation are not okay. And my heart goes out to anyone who knew them and was part of their lives. I just can't imagine.
Did they cry?
No, if they started crying, I would like take their face and say, "It's gonna be okay. Show me your smile." Like I really tried to and one of my students was, would say like things like, "I know karate, so it's okay. I'll lead the way out."
They really said to you, "We want to go home for Christmas."
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just want to hug my mom, or just things like that were just heartbreaking, and like in my mind, because you're hearing. I've never been a part of something, obviously, anywhere near this traumatic. And so I'm hearing the gunfire in the hallway, and I'm thinking in my mind, I'm the first classroom. Why isn't he coming? I'm thinking we're next. And, and in my mind, I'm thinking, as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, what are your thoughts? What are your, and I'm thinking that I have to almost be their parent. Like I have to tell them, so I said to them, I need you to know that I love you all very much. And that it's going to be okay, because I thought that was the last thing they were ever going to hear. I thought we were all going to die. And I don't know if that's okay, teachers, and, but I wanted them to know someone loved them, and I wanted that to be one of the last things they heard. Not the gunfire in the hallway. It's so horrible. Horrible.
How did you know you were going to be okay? What happened?
I didn't. What finally happened was the gunfire stopped. The gunfire wasn't that long, so that stopped. But I said, no, we're not going anywhere. We're staying here until someone good comes in. Gets us out. So eventually, what happened was the police came and started knocking. And obviously, I was completely beside myself. And I said, I don't believe you. You need to put your badges under the door. So they put their badges under the door. I said, if you're really a police officer, then you would have a way to get in here. You would have a key, or you would have gotten it from the jam. If everything's okay now, you would have found the keys. So he had keys, and he found the right one, and he unlocked the door, and then they brought us out to the firehouse to meet up with the rest of the teachers and students, waiting for parents to come and pick them up.
I think there are a lot of people who wish.
So, true story. She saved all of her kids just by successfully denying. I know, it joked me up the first time I saw it too. So let's say it fails, right? For whatever reason, this is a very determined bad guy, and he decides to push through the barricades, kicks in the door, breaks the lock, whatever, and he's able to make entry into that room. Then we go into fight mode, defend mode. When I talk about positioning, put yourself at a position of advantage. By position of advantage, as you can see in this photo, notice how the guys are next to the door. Bad guy comes in, grab a hold of the gun. The bad stuff comes out of that, and try and hide that. Okay? Then you're going to start fighting, right? If it's just you, or if it's a group of you, you're going to fight like you've never fought before. Okay? You're going to attack weak spots. We're not fighting fair. This isn't Tim Kennedy in a UFC ring. Okay? My man crush, Tim Kennedy. If you don't know who that is, look him up. Pretty awesome dude. But grab a hold of the gun. Fight like you've never fought before. Attack weak spots. Eyes, nose, throat, groin. Okay? If you have any sort of weapon, that's when you use it. Okay? Whether that be a knife, whether that be a coffee pot, a baseball bat, a wrench, a screwdriver, whatever. Okay? You're fighting for your life. And you have the legal right to defend yourself. You need to stop that threat to your safety, to your coworker's safety, and to your family's safety. So however you need to do it, whatever type of emotions you have, turn that fear into anger, right? Turn that fear into a will to survive, to get home to your family, to whatever it is that you live for, whether it be your wife, your husband, your kids, your dog, your goldfish, whatever, right? You need to fight for that. And so it's going to be a fight. And just because you get shot doesn't mean that you're going to die. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. So from that kosher deli, the same one, this man right here, he's a retired Royal Marine from the Queen's Army. I guess it's the King's Army now. Too soon? But you'll see he realizes the bad guy comes in, starts shooting, and turns his back. And he says, this is my moment of opportunity. So he grabs the most European weapon available and takes the fight to the guy. So he sees that he has an opportunity, so he grabs the bottle, and he says, let's do this. God save the Queen. Tally-ho. He goes off to bash him over the head. This lady, what's she doing? Playing dead, right? Hiding and hoping. His reaction was to fight, hers was to freeze. So when I said, if you're going to get shot, it doesn't mean you're going to die. This is Lieutenant Brian Murphy. He was a police officer who was working a shoplifting case at a Walmart. He gets a call from the loss prevention people at Walmart, and they said, we got this guy. He hit a bunch of items, and he's coming out. Lieutenant Brian Murphy stops out with them, and they get into a foot chase, right? They get into a quick scuffle. The guy won't comply. They get into a foot chase. While they're running through this parking lot, bad guy pulls out a gun, turns around, and shoots him 9 times. Okay? His vest caught a few of those rounds. He was also hit in the leg. He was hit in the arm, hit in the wrist, and hit in the throat. Okay? He was able to fight through getting shot 9 times, draw his gun, and put that bad guy down. The human body is amazing. You can fight through a lot of pain. Especially you ladies. I mean, you guys have a huge pain tolerance, right? And you guys can fight through it. Me, not so much. I get the sniffles and I think I need to go to the hospital. All right, so know your surroundings. Know what you have in an area that can help you survive an attack. Know your exits. right? Have good situational awareness. Be aware of your surroundings. If you can identify a threat before it's a threat to you and avoid the situation altogether, that's the best option. If you can't avoid the attack and the attack begins, it's time to deny them access to your location. Once you've denied them access to your location, look for some secondary exits. If you got to bust out a window to get out, windows are replaceable, you're not. So, bust out that window, get out. And if you can't get out, prepare to defend yourself. What you do matters, right? So if the attack starts, what are we going to do? Get out of a primary exit. If we can, we're going to get the heck out. Avoid. What if we can't? We're going to deny. And then we're going to look for a secondary exit. If we find a secondary exit, we're getting out. If there is no secondary exit or tertiary exit, we're going to prepare to defend ourselves. Okay? Just in case bad things happen. I'm going to go through this quick since I've only got 2 minutes left. Virginia Tech. This is a case study. This is Norris Hall where the attack happened. It happened on the 2nd floor. Bad guy came in, chained the door shut so nobody could get in or out, goes up to the 2nd floor and begins his attack. So, if you look, these are the different classrooms. Christina Anderson was in this classroom here. Okay? In this schematic, red means dead, yellow was wounded, green is unharmed. So, bad guy started his attack in room 206. He went in, started shooting, ended up killing all those people, wounding 2, and by the grace of God, 2 people survived. He then went into room 211 for the first time, went through and started shooting. He then left room 211, and he went to room 204. Luckily, room 204, they tried to deny access. The professor barricaded the door with his body while they opened up the 2nd-story windows, and 10 people jumped to safety. The bad guy was able to fire through the door, unfortunately hit the professor, and was able to gain access to the room where he ended up wounding 4 and killing 1 and including 2, including the professor. He then went in the room 207, and again, 2 people, by the grace of God, weren't injured. A bunch were wounded, and a bunch died. There was no sort of no denial. Room 205, successful denial. This is a very old building. If you saw from the photo, the doors did not have locks on them. And so what they did was they laid on the ground and they used their feet to brace the door. Bad guy came up to the door, tried to get in, pushed, it wouldn't open. He fired a few rounds through the door, then he went back to room 211. He then went back to room 206, then back in the room 211, where he finally killed himself. So this just shows that avoiding works. Denial works. Unfortunately, they didn't have anybody who was able to defend, but I like to think that if they could, like the heroes of United Flight 93, who took down the hijackers and saved the White House and the Congress building from getting hit by a plane, maybe they could have saved even more lives. So this is just another way to show the same schematic. So when the police arrive, follow all commands, right? We're trained to look at people's hands for threats. We might not know who the threat is. A lot of times the threat, if they're trying to escape, will throw down their equipment, throw down their gun, and try and blend in with the fleeing crowd. So we're going to detain everybody, search everybody, and then we're going to take everybody out in an orderly fashion, okay, after we've extracted the wounded. Our goals, our first goal is to stop the killing, meaning we're going to go direct to threat and stop the person who's harming others. If that means you're shot and we have to pass you to go get that bad guy, that might happen. Just know that you are going to get medical attention eventually. And if you have medical training, help others. And our second thing is we're going to stop the dying, which is where we come back and do that casualty evaluation and start treating patients. And then we're going to start evacuating the injured. And then after the injured are evacuated, we'll evacuate the people who are not injured. So this is a video from the San Bernardino County office that was attacked on their Christmas party by 2 husband and wife who were radicalized overseas. They came over and carried out an attack with pipe. It started with pipe bombs, and then they used weapons. So after it was all over, the bad guys left the scene. Police ended up finding them. They got in a shootout, took them out. They were This is the cops evacuating. This kind of shows how we're going to do it. We're going to do it single file. We're going to have you walk out with your hands up and once you leave, you're going to be searched to make sure you don't have any weapons, and then you're going to be interviewed by a detective because you did just witness a homicide, and we'll reunite you with your family.
Are you ready? If you're not cool, I'm not walking with you. Sir? Trust walking that deputy, keep your hands right with him. I'm always that deputy. You're going to be left with deputy out. Thank you. Thank you. Try to relax, everyone. Try to relax. I'll take a bullet before you get that answer. Just be cool, okay?
So, if you have medical training, now's the time to shine. Help others if you can. Seek additional training, okay? We have a course that we have called Stop the Bleed, where we teach pretty much anybody who wants to know how to put on tourniquets, how to apply pressure to wounds, how to pack wounds with gauze and quick claw and stop massive bleeding. Most people die from gunshot wounds, not from the gunshot wound itself, but from blood loss after the fact. Unless you're hit in the central nervous system, right, the head or the eyes, you're most likely going to survive being shot if you get medical intervention and stop bleeding. So this is a class that we teach at the Sheriff's Office. Also, there's a place that teaches it for free out in Timberline called Timberline Firearms and Training. If you guys go to their website, I know they host free trainings out there for anybody who wants to go. And it's put on by Flagstaff Medical Center as well and Guardian. So if you are a part of this attack, expect some mental trauma, get help if you need it, have a good critical stress incident plan, have a good family structure, someone you can talk to, and don't be ashamed if you are suffering from some sort of mental issues because of this. It's completely normal. PTSD is a real thing. A lot of people have it, and getting treatment for it is getting better and better and better. Throughout this entire presentation, you never heard me name any of these attackers, right? And I'm not going to harp on this as long as I normally do. But if you don't play into their game, the reason these people want to do this is because they want to be famous. They want their name to have notoriety. I can tell you that all of us in this room can probably name some of the attackers throughout history, right? But what I want to do is I want people to focus on the heroes of these events. I want people to talk about Victoria Soto, who was a first grade teacher at Sandy Hook Elementary, who tried to wrestle the gun and block the door from her first grade classroom, right? She died trying to stop the attacker. She is who we should remember, not the scumbag that decided to attack. Or Angela McQueen. She was a PE teacher and a physical fitness teacher. Student came into the school, was walking down the hallways shooting at people with a shotgun. She ran down the hall, tackled him, disarmed him, held him in a chokehold till police arrived. Has anyone ever heard her name before? No. Exactly. These are the people that we need to memorialize and remember. So in summary, we talked about different active attack or active shooter events. We talked about disaster response and situational awareness. And we talked about what you can do: avoid, deny, defend. And then we went over the Virginia Tech case study. Are there any questions? Because that concludes my... Go ahead.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
You kind of talked about that, like one of those heroes being at the church who shot back.
Mm-hmm.
Is it true that somebody trying to shoot the attacker would confuse the law enforcement?
So yes, we actually teach a class for, it's called SWORD, or Solo Officer Rapid Deployment, where if you're off duty and you have to go to one of these shootings, and you're involved and you're not in uniform, what we tell people is if you need to use your firearm off duty, and for you guys it's always off duty because civilians, that as soon as that threat is no longer a threat to you, we tell you to get behind cover or concealment, holster, and put your hands up. If the bad guy emerges, you can draw back out and re-engage. What we don't want to happen is when uniformed law enforcement arrives to an active shooter, you're sitting there holding a gun, right? Because it's been shown time and time again. In fact, we did a training at the Sheriff's Office where it was an active shooter in a school, and one of the scenarios was the cops make entry, there's gunfire, we go to the gunfire, and we had an off-duty cop holding up a badge and holding the guy at gunpoint, 80% of the time, as they cleared that thing, they shot that guy because they saw someone holding someone else at gunpoint. And those are trained cops. And the guy had a badge. Remember that tunnel vision I told you about? We were using what's called simunitions, which are real guns that shoot paint bullets, kind of like paintball, but way more advanced. So what I can say is if you do have your concealed carry permit and you are carrying, if you do have to use it, as soon as that threat is no longer, holster, keep your hands up, call 911, have somebody else tell them that you were just involved in a citizen-involved shooting, what you're wearing, and then don't have that gun in your hands when the police arrive. Yes, ma'am.
Is it required to have do you need a concealed permit?
No.
In order to conceal in Arizona?
Nope. Arizona is a constitutional carry state.
Do you recommend it?
You could take it out of state.
So Arizona is a constitutional carry state, so anybody over the age of 21 who's not a prohibited possessor can carry a concealed firearm. As far as do you need one? Well, one, if you get one, then you don't have to go through the background check when you buy guns, which is kind of cool. And two, it gives you training on when you legally can and can't use force based on Arizona revised statutes, right? Because you can use force to protect your life or the life of someone else from intimate fear of danger or serious bodily injury, right? And so you don't have to have it, but I would say if you can afford it and you have the time, get some training so you learn the laws, and also they'll teach you how to actually use your firearm safely and correctly for protection and all that stuff.
We just had ladies' night at Timberline. It was really, really awesome. Like they train you. It was my first time.
Are you part of the
Was there alcohol?
Well-armed women?
Well-armed women?
What's that? Well-armed women?
No.
We're looking
Oh.
at, if you're interested, let me know, because we're going to try to do that.
Oh, because my wife teaches to them.
And they do
really?
Thursday
Yeah.
ladies' night.
She's a deputy too.
Awesome.
So,
What's her name?
Alyssa Payne.
So, if I can maybe talk to her, she just call Timberline in and just.
I can just give you her number if
Yeah,
you
that'd
want.
be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
That was really, really cool from the safety, from knowing the relationship with the gun.
And that's when it's a little confusing. I know when we went to the thing on Saturday, they recommended that, you shouldn't really bring a firearm because they may be taken away from you, and especially if you're not well versed.
I think because studies show that a lot of people don't know how to use their firearm,
Exactly.
and that's the issue. That's why he's suggesting that you learn how to use it and be
And get
prepared.
training.
I am, and to be honest with you, I do carry when I do open houses because I don't know these people.
Yeah.
But are you comfortable enough to use it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. A lot of people might have them, but they just don't know how to use it, and that's the issue with it.
But don't bring your knife.
I mean, just recently, Elijah Dickin, 20-some-year-old guy at the mall, bad guy went to the bathroom, came out shooting with a rifle. In 15 seconds, from 40 yards away, he drew his 9mm pistol and stopped that threat. So it's up to you. It's a personal decision, right? And if you believe you have the training and whatnot, then I would say, that's up to you. I mean, I train a lot of people. That's part of my job as a firearms instructor. And there's a lot of people I'm like, yes, I would want you in a firefight. And there's other people who'd be like,
Your risk to yourself type of
Yeah.
thing.
What's the difference there?
between people who can shoot and can't?
No, between the people you want and not want. Is it their?
No, it's how
Oh, they're.
Yeah, how well they can aim.
Okay.
And how exactly.
Their personality.
What was your question?
If you carry a gun and you go into a place that says you can't carry guns in there, and then something happens in that building and you are carrying anyways, and you stop that shooter, what's the legal?
So that literally just happened at the mall in Elijah Dickin was in. So basically, if a business has a sign that says you can't carry a firearm, unless it's like a bar where it's restricted from Arizona revised statutes, where it's a Title IV violation, you can actually be cited for that. But if it's just like a business, like let's say Flagstaff Mall, and you're in there and someone says, security comes up and says you can't carry a gun in here, you need to leave. As long as you leave, you're fine. It's not against the law.
Shoot somebody in the mall because somebody came in there.
I think you'd be
You'd be
renowned as a
okay.
hero. Yeah, I mean, there's
Like
no
the
crime
police
against.
isn't-
Well, the guy went into the church. You're not allowed to bring guns in the church, whether you have a permit or not. So,
Why not?
You can't have bullets in you can bring a gun, but without bullets in a school, or if you have a
I don't know about the church, because I'm part of our church security team and I carry guns.
Well, the concealed carry class says no government, no churches, and no schools. You're allowed to bring the gun with the bullets in it. You can have the bullets on the side.
Yeah, so government buildings, a lot of times will have a lockbox. Right. So like at the police station, if you're carrying, we have a lockbox where you can secure it with a key. It's like a gun locker that you keep the key, and then when you leave, you can take it and go. Courthouse has gun lockers as well. Almost all government buildings have those. And usually the security will help you out with that. As far as churches, I'll have to look into that because I was not aware of that.
It may be, I mean, it might be set to us, not I don't know.
Yeah, so, but yeah. And then what was the other one you said? Bars?
No, actually. No.
Yeah, bars you can.
No, schools, government buildings, and churches.
Oh yeah, schools, obviously, unless you're law enforcement, you can't carry on school grounds. That's,
He did say that you can carry it, but you can't have bullets in it. You can have the bullets on one pocket and the gun on the other.
I don't think that's true. I would just not carry a gun on a school campus. Just, leave it in your car, secure it in your car, do what you need to do.
But she has a point, though. I mean, if you're hearing, and you're in a government building or in a school, now you're going in carrying a gun as a civilian and trying to help. I mean, you're probably gonna get in trouble, get cited.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if it's a good shoot, yeah, I was gonna say, if you stop a mass murder, I'm pretty sure they're gonna be like, so anytime you use a gun in self-defense, right, we do a homicide investigation. You're technically a suspect of homicide. We just say, yes, it was what we call justifiable homicide, right? We just recently had an officer-involved shooting on Highway 89 where the guy with a screwdriver charged one of our deputies, and that was a justifiable homicide, right? He had a deadly weapon and was an intimate threat to that deputy's safety, and so he discharged his firearm. The same thing is going to go for you. They'll look at the facts and circumstances surrounding that use of force and say, yes, it was justified, right? And obviously it's going to be justified if somebody's going around shooting innocent civilians and you stop that person, you're not going to be held criminally liable or even possibly civilly liable for that. Because obviously you were a good Samaritan, you were helping out, and it was justified under Arizona law. Yes?
We just had Paige in our office with Kara. I'm sure there's no experience on safety issues, right, during the open house.
I heard about the creepy guy. My friend's a realtor.
Sure, creepy guy. Yeah, we'll call him that way. But she reported, right? And then on Facebook, she was very, alerting all of us. And we activated a lot of tools. But the fact that another gal reported the same guy, but there's nothing that can be done to even investigate him because even though he expressed the predator behavior, he hasn't approached, he hasn't done anything. Now there's a second report. I don't feel comfortable, right? Knowing that he is there, knowing that he is
following. How many reports before it's a pattern? And actually, you have to.
So the thing is that there has to be a crime that's been committed.
Exactly. Well,
but
so for a creepy guy who shows up to open houses,
he asked, are you alone? What are you wearing? And then he was following her throughout the whole open house. And then he's following another female.
So what I would do is, if that guy shows up and starts exhibiting that behavior, call the police and have him removed from the open house. And have him trespass.
Maybe too late, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's when this whole avoid, deny, defend thing becomes.
And don't post your open houses alone. But
correct.
How many times do we do that?
So,
but I won't.
So a friend of mine, who's a realtor, she just recently hosted an open house, and she had her husband, who's a retired cop, come and just hang out at the open house because of that same creepy guy, and he was carrying, and then of course the guy never showed up.
But the title companies will sometimes come with you, and the lenders will sometimes come with you, and
right? Yeah, there is safety in numbers, right? Because if something happens to one person, you have somebody there to assist and to call for help.
But I'm saying this is as close as it can happen, and still nothing would be done about that. So I'm concerned about what else can be done. Proactively before.
So proactively, what you can do is, if this guy is identified by the police, you can get what's called an injunction against harassment, which is, you guys have heard of an order of protection, a restraining order. In Arizona, if it's not if you don't have a relationship with the person, it's called an injunction against harassment. It's a court order that he has to stay away, and you can file it on your behalf, and you can file it for your office as well. So he can't come anywhere where your office is operating and where you are. But the thing is we have to have that person identified, exactly. And all you got to do is go down to the Flagstaff Justice Court and request an injunction against harassment. You'll have the name of the person based upon the police report that is generated, and then you can file that. But here's the thing, it's just a piece of paper. So once he's served with it, right, if he shows up or if he shows up at an open house that you're at, you have an injunction, you immediately call the cops, he goes straight to jail for violating a court order. But it's just a piece of paper. If he shows up and wants to do something, something's going to happen. So that's the only thing I can think of. But until he's committed an actual crime, now you could also look at if it's a pattern of behavior, if it happens more than once, there's harassment and stalking charges that we could look at as well. But that has to be on multiple occasions after he's been given or after he's been told to stop, right? You have to say, I don't like this behavior, stop. And then if he continues, he can be charged criminally. Any other questions?
But those are like pre-proofs and nothing been done. Like there are things like in a school shooting, like students are saying to the principal, those are bullying us. Or nothing has been done. One of the stories like from my nephew in a different state, he's been bullied.
Mm-hmm.
My sister goes to the principal, nothing. He threatened my nephew. He said like, I will kill you. They went to the police, nothing has been done. And he hates school now. So it's like those
I understand.
are the stories.
It's horrible, and it probably happened, right? But an arrest can't be made without probable cause. And so we have to have facts and circumstances that would lead a reasonable person to believe a crime has been committed. If it's your nephew's word versus the bully's word, and there's no third-party independent witnesses of that threat, it's kind of like he said versus he said. And how do you prove that beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law?
A little camera and record.
So yeah, if there was a video footage of it, or they recorded the audio of the person threatening him, then absolutely, that's concrete evidence right there. An arrest could be made on that.
Start carrying a personal camera.
Right.
They're not cheap. I mean, they're not expensive. If you go to an open house, I just did one on Saturday, and have a camera, make it prominent there, and then put a sign that says before they enter the door that says "Smile, you're on camera." I mean, there's ways to, even if you don't have a camera, I faked it and had a sign out front that said "Smile, you're on camera," and register. But the whole intent of what you're saying today is that the police are minutes away when seconds matter. So it's really more important that we know how to be aware of our surroundings, to be able to protect ourselves as best as we can, whether that's to avoid and run, or we're going to contact your wife and do the well-armed women.
There you go.
Yeah. Bring a lender with you too, so they can take application. And maybe sell the house.
Yeah. But thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
This has been so helpful, and thank you for what you do.
Well, I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity, and I love teaching this class. I think the more people that get it, the better, because it's good citizens that know this type of thing that will save lives when something bad does happen. So if you guys have any other organizations that you want this class at, just hit up John Paxton, and then he's like my booking agent, so he'll book me to go
sorry,
wherever.
I got your name wrong.
That's totally cool.
It was Jess.
Jess Payne.
Jess Payne.
Yep.
Jess Payne. Jess Payne.
Yes, Jess. Payne.
Please make sure you grab some stuff on the way out.
All right.
I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.